I don't have a lot of opportunities to record videos nowadays, so I take advantage when I can. I apologize for the optics, but I wanted to share a Devar Torah that I gave to the Chavara for Parashat Vayigash. The Zohar, one might say the principal text of Jewish mysticism, certainly during the medieval period, makes an interesting connection between Hanoch, Enoch, that we read about, I think it's in Genesis 5:24, something like that, and the person of Joseph. The Zohar looks to the book of Mishlei, the book of Proverbs, where we read Hanoch al na'ar al pi darko. Hanoch la na'ar al pi darko, and it's usually translated as instruct the youth or the child in his way, or in the way that he should go, is sort of the emendation. The word Hanoch here is obviously related to the word chinuch. It's we think about Sefer HaChinuch, the book of instruction that we use for children. Now, in terms of Enoch, it's interesting because many scholars have theorized that his name might also be derived from the word Chanukah, dedication. And if you think about Enoch, he walks with Hashem 365 years, and he was taken in some form or fashion. It seems likely, if he's a tzaddik, if he's righteous, that he's dedicated to the service of God. There's also another word, I think it's Haniv, I can't remember specifically, the word that means like a liege man. Haniv, I think is the word. And it's something that we read about in the context of Abraham Avinu when he calls out his 318 men of his household to go and rescue Lot. So there are many different possibilities that might explain the origin of the word Hanoch, but in this context it's clear that it's related to Chinuch. And it's interesting because there's a whole body of literature that is written around the person of Hanoch. The Sefer Chalot, which scholars refer to as Third Enoch. You have First Enoch, or Second Enoch, Slavonic Enoch, so forth. Many of these texts, of course, have been preserved as part of the pseudepigrapha, some of them actually by Christianity. But Sefer Chalot is a rabbinic text without question. And these texts embrace the view that Hanoch is taken up on a heavenly ascent. He's transformed into a malach, an angel, Metatron, etc., different views. But there's also the other view, which is that of Rashi and others, that Hanoch indeed was a righteous individual, but Hashem doesn't let him ascend, sort of like Eliyahu Hanavi. Rather, he takes him, he ends his life, he lets him die, if you will. But it's for the sake of protecting him, because Hanoch was a righteous individual, but according to this line of thought, his righteousness would not have survived the reality of the world that was taking place in his time. Of course, eventually we have Hanoch as an ancestor of Noah. That the world will be destroyed by the flood. And so in many ways, the idea behind Rashi's view and others is that he is basically saved. He's allowed to maintain his righteous stance because Hashem basically understands that he's not going to survive. His righteousness can survive in solitude. It cannot withstand the evil that will surround him. In the case of Yosef, however, we have a very different situation. We have a na'ar, we have a youth. Back to the word, the phrase in Mishlei, Hanoch la na'ar, instruct the youth. And Joseph is able to withstand the temptations and the wickedness that exists in Egypt. The Talmud speaks of 10 portions of sorcery, and 9 of them were in Egypt. And of course, obviously, the case of Potiphar's wife and the sexual temptation and so forth was something that was characteristic in many ways, we could argue, about Egypt. And yet, Joseph is able to withstand that. Now, the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, argues that Joseph had an element of the soul, or a part of Hanoch within him. In essence, it allowed Hanoch to live in this world in the way that Joseph had, because he was able to resist. And I think the main thing that we can draw from this is the simple fact that we're not monks. We don't live in a cloistered environment. We face reality on a day in and day out basis. And in reality, that's what Hashem desires. This is what the Torah is about, to be able to interact and to be an example to others, to be or legoyim, right? To be a light unto the nations. And I was reading another book that I mentioned this last Shabbat. It was Yosef on the Spectrum. I believe the author is Samuel Levine, but he talks about his idea, his premise is that Joseph was on the spectrum of autism. And I say that because I have a son who is diagnosed as autistic, and we have a little one, we have 3 sons, who we also believe to be on the spectrum. They're fully functional, but it's something that is, has its challenges. And one of the things that my older son does is that when he wants to communicate something, there's almost this incessant need to communicate it. He can't stop. He focuses and he has to relate to you what it is that he wants to say. What I said is that in some sense we have to have that kind of tenacity to do what is right, to live in accordance with Hashem's dictates as explained in the Torah and according to Halakha, and to have that kind of obsessiveness when it comes to that, so that we can live out the type of example that Joseph had in his day. So may Hashem give us that kind of tenacity. May we stand firm in the midst of the Yetzer Hara, and may Hashem grant us success as we endeavor to live in this world.